And immediately, while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude, with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him, and lead him away safely. And as soon as he was come, he goeth straightway to him, and saith, Master, Master, and he kissed him. And so it begins, how far we have come in this moment of betrayal, so starkly portrayed by Giotto. How far in just a few short days. Then Jesus was welcomed, and great crowds gathered, and palm leaves were laid at his feet, and the people sang hosannas. Now the crowds come again, but this time with swords instead of palm stems. How quickly things can change. In our own lives too, of course, where once there was fellowship, kinship, and love. Now there is hatred, suspicion, and fear. Bonds are broken, brothers and sisters are enemies, even unto death. Yet how had this come to be? How had this great devotee of Jesus turned away from him? We can speculate that the first grumblings of discontent began back in Bethany, when Mary had poured the expensive alabaster jar of oil over Jesus' head, and several there present, including Judas, who looked after the money, were appalled at her extravagance. It was Passover, a time when everyone was encouraged to give alms to the poor. Some of Christ's disciples, including Judas, were indignant at the extravagance, and they admonished the woman. But Jesus defended her, saying, Let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. But Judas especially was not reassured by these words, and he began to doubt. On the night of the Last Supper, Jesus speaks openly of the betrayal soon to come, for he knows the secrets of all their hearts. It is the moment tenderly depicted in Giotto's fresco of the Last Supper, where we see Simon Peter leaning upon Jesus' chest. Amen, amen, I say to you, one of you will betray me. The disciples looked at one another, and at a loss as to whom he meant. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter nodded to him to find out what he meant. And he leaned back against Jesus' chest and said to him, Master, who is it? It is the one to whom I hand the morsel after I have dipped it. So he dipped the morsel and took it and handed it to Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot. And after Judas took the morsel, Satan entered him. So Jesus said to him, What you are going to do, do it quickly. Judas leaves the supper early then, and later, knowing the hour is close, Jesus leads his disciples to the Mount of Olives and to the Garden of Gethsemane, and there he bids them wait for him and keep watch, saying, My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch with me. And he went a little farther, and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. And 3 times he went from them in this way, and 3 times he returned and found them sleeping, and he roused and rebuked them, each time repeating his words, until finally, on the 3rd occasion, he roused them, saying, "Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me." Then Judas comes, as we see in the paintings, and the deed is done, and Jesus is taken, and all the disciples scatter and fall away as predicted, each with their conscience to bear. And no one knows for sure what they are thinking, for this is part of the story not told. Yet it is not difficult to imagine, is it? How did it come to this? How have I found myself here in this utterly untenable predicament? Why, oh why did I act as I did? We know, of course, that Judas had lost trust in Jesus over the incident with the oil. He couldn't see how it was justified and was not convinced by what Jesus told him. It is likely that he felt Jesus was contradicting himself, and so he judged him, and the rest we already know. Betrayals are so often based on judgments such as these that we have no right to make, for in doing so we put ourselves above the other. We create a narrative about them where there is no way for them to come out right. We are righteous, indignant, and justified in whatever action we then choose to pursue. But so frequently, as is so glaringly obvious here, Judas was simply unaware of the greater picture, the greater purpose and meaning behind Jesus' acceptance of Mary's generosity. In gazing at Giotto's painting, I am struck by the expression of both men in their embrace. At first glance, it appears as any other embrace might be between 2 close friends. It is intimate, and thinking on about betrayals in general, and in my own experience, such acts are indeed intimate, but not in a good way. They are violations, infringements, and invasions of intimacy, which is why they hurt so much more when perpetrated by those we should be able to trust. In Dante's Inferno, the punishments ascribed to those who betray those with whom they share a special bond are always more severe. And Judas did share such a bond, deeper, some say, than any of the other disciples. He understood Christ's purpose profoundly. All the more shocking then, until we remember, as we must, for this is, in a sense, one of the great enigmas of the story, that both men were on this night struggling to reconcile what is highest, what transcends them, their divine purpose, with the mortal, flesh and blood aspects of themselves, which are by definition susceptible to doubt, to frailty and forgetfulness. And on this night of agony, it is these blinkered aspects that momentarily win out, and most spectacularly for Judas. Jesus falters for a brief span in the garden, but Judas, in his betrayal, falls. But at the higher octave, if you like, the level at which sacred contracts are made in heaven, there was no betrayal, and no sin was committed. Judas, the Gnostics say, was not a traitor. He was the one chosen to fulfill the destiny of Jesus, giving him in sacrifice for all humankind. All was divinely ordered and understood, but at the level of the two mortal friends, it must have all hurt like hell.